Bonjour tout le monde, tous mes meilleurs voeux pour cette nouvelle année 2023. Je suis très heureuse de vous retrouver pour ce nouveau cycle de conférences de la Fondation Fondamentale qui dans cette année où nous venons donc d'obtenir le PEPR avec une très grosse partie innovation et partenariat pour le développement de nouveaux outils qui soient diagnostiques ou thérapeutiques, il nous a semblé important de faire un point sur les innovations à la fois en termes de mécanismes, mais aussi en termes d'exemples. Donc, vous aurez un panorama toute l'année de prise de parole à la fois d'académiques et d'industriels qui vont donner des exemples de ce que l'innovation peut faire en psychiatrie. Donc, je suis très, très heureuse aujourd'hui qu'on ait comme discutant de cette conférence Philippe Vernier, à qui je vais donner la parole dans 2 secondes et demie. Vous le connaissez tous. Philippe Vernier est un grand neurobiologiste qui est directeur au CNRS et directeur de l'Institut Joliot au CEA, qui va présider la conférence de Pavel Sviboda. Et je laisse Philippe introduire Pavel, que je remercie beaucoup, beaucoup, beaucoup d'avoir accepté de faire cette introduction à notre cycle de conférences sur l'innovation en psychiatrie. Je vous souhaite une très bonne conférence et un très bon cycle de conférences 2023.
Merci Marion, merci pour tes mots trop aimables et bonne année aussi à tous. I will now switch to English to introduce Pavel Sviboda. Pavel Sviboda is currently the Chief Executive Officer of eBrains, and eBrains is the European digital infrastructure which is designed to keep alive, I would say, and to continue all the advances which have been reached and gained in the framework of the Human Brain Project, and to push it further, of course, to new steps, and to develop these tools at the service of the community, including the medical and psychiatric community. I think it's very important, and I'm sure that Pavel will speak about this in the presentation. And I think I have spoken enough already, and now please, Pavel, the floor is yours, and we are looking forward to your conference. And then I will keep keep the discussion alive when you have finished.
Okay, thank you so much, Marion and Philippe, for this very warm welcome, and I'm truly delighted to join you early in 23. At this fascinating series of conferences that Fondation Fondamentale has organized. I've been asked to speak about innovation in psychiatry in Europe. So I've done my homework, and I would like to basically take you through what is happening at the European level with respect to innovation in psychiatry. To be sure, there isn't a single strategy that one can look towards to answer this question. So what I've done is I've pulled together different bits and pieces of activities and initiatives in order to put forward to you a few suggestions how innovation in Europe in psychiatry needs to be promoted and also taken advantage from. So let me share a few slides. My main points and my opening point will be that 2023 looks like a very promising year for what we are to discuss today. And this is because late last year, the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, proposed to give mental health an altogether different emphasis. She spoke about this in her State of the Union address in September. This is the annual speech when each president of the Commission sets out her or his policy priorities. And she made a very strong emphasis on mental health, announcing that in 2023, the Commission will come forward with a comprehensive approach to mental health. So this has been branded the New European Mental Health Initiative already, and it's a super important policy development, which I will come back to because I think our community needs to make a strong input to this initiative. And we simply need to share with the Commission at the beginning of 23 our recommendations with respect to what should be done in innovation in psychiatry at the European level. This initiative, of course, doesn't exactly fall from the sky. It's partly conditioned by the situation and especially the pandemic implications on mental health. But it is also a few years in the making. If we look back to the last decades, there was a lot of discussion with respect to EU mental health policy in association with the UN Sustainable Development Goals. That's when in 2018, a steering group was set up, which was tasked with supporting member states in reaching the health targets of these Sustainable Development Goals. And in that year, 2018, also they decided to prioritize mental health as the area for best practice. There was a lot of room for exchange of best practices during the COVID-19 pandemic, and the EU health policy platform also prioritized mental health during that period. Importantly, last year in late spring, the Commission announced its Healthier Together initiative on non-communicable diseases, where a chapter was also very prominently included on neurological disorders and mental health. I think the provisions of this initiative are extremely important because they are about making sure that mental health is implemented in all policies. The recommendations also cover issues of prevention and promotion of mental health, and surely access to health services, as well as the question of rights of people suffering from mental disorders. So at the policy level, this is at the moment sort of a state-of-the-art series of recommendations to the member states. To be sure, the Commission cannot, of course, decide everything in the area of public health. It is the member states which are in the driver's seat, but the Union has important competences on the basis of the latest Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union in Article 168. It is stressed that the Union needs to complement activities of the member states. There is also focus on mental health now in the EU for Health program. And there is a specific joint action envisaged for the second half of this year for Q3. This is a joint action addressed to the member states primarily, and it is about the transfer of best practices and also innovative approaches. Finally, there is not only action at the European level, but more broadly, globally. And in particular, the WHO has been extremely active in the past few months. We also have community efforts such as the One Neurology Initiative, and we have in many member states around Europe emerging brain plans. And I think it's worth drawing attention to those because they are about ensuring that emphasis on brain health is more systematically factored into the equation at the level of the member states. I mentioned the WHO work, and in particular their August blueprint on optimizing brain health is extremely well written and very valuable in terms of their guidelines. And there is also of course, a lot on the relationship between mental health and brain health in that paper. Now, let me switch to the question of innovation, and I will just share with you a few opening thoughts about why innovation needs to have such a strong focus. And I will arrive to it from the theory of innovation. I mean, why do we have it in place, first of all? And we have it in place because it can ensure that the possibilities frontier is shifted. And what is meant by the possibilities frontier is in industry, the volume of goods which can be produced through by means of a given set of resources. So basically outcomes which can be achieved with a certain set of inputs. And we need innovation to shift that possibilities frontier, in other words, to achieve better results. And in healthcare more generally, and in psychiatry in particular, this is about the need to be more focused on outcomes in our approaches. And we have to be clear about the fact that the current healthcare is not sufficiently incentivizing better outcomes. Why? Because it wasn't set up to do so. It's set up as a fee-for-service model, and so that is not enough to take us to better outcomes. Data is a key component of this type of systemic shift, which would be needed. Because first of all, of course, well-structured data would allow us to benefit from better insights in the volume of health data. And you have the figure here on the slide of what type of dimension we're talking about, 50 petabytes of data per year produced by hospitals. Of course, most of that is inaccessible, and very little of that can be translated into real value. But well-structured data is also needed for us to be able to measure what outcomes are achieved, and hence to promote better outcomes. So transparency, which would result from this, would be definitely extremely valuable for governments in their reimbursement decisions. And in mental health, this is of particular importance because as Thomas Insel has said in his recent book, Healing, mental health problem is medical, but the solutions are not just medical. They are social, environmental, and political. So he calls for a holistic, comprehensive approach to mental health, also drawing attention to the fact that prevalence of mental disorders in the US, that's what he writes about, has not increased, but care has gotten worse. So there is a care problem rather than prevalence problem. Now, zooming in on Europe, I would like to start with the question of brain research, because that's where innovation needs to be anchored. And here there is progress. We have seen higher budgets being devoted to brain research over the years. If you compare the 7th framework program in the years 2017, 2013 to the Horizon 2020 program, there has been increase, and we can see it also across the different categories of funding. So from frontier research to collaborative research and further. Now, psychiatry is present in all pillars of Europe's research and innovation program, Horizon Europe, 95 billion euro, just to keep it in mind. Europe's prime instrument of influencing and impacting on research and innovation. And I will make a brief overview of the different pillars. We have 3 of those: excellent science, global challenges and industrial competitiveness, and innovative Europe. But the way we need to look at this is twofold. I mean, first of all, we need to look at the horizontal actions, because when, as you will see very shortly from my presentation, there is not always a specific focus on psychiatry. I've distilled the different projects which exist. But we need to look at the possibilities more broadly, namely, and that's the deliberate approach also in Horizon Europe in this period, not to be domain specific, because the assumption is that Europe would quickly run out of money trying to spend enough on the different specific areas. But there is a horizontal approach, and groups such as the ones that in which we are meeting today need to compete with the other scientific areas. So that's point number one, that we need to see how to benefit from the horizontal actions from frontier research through mobility and training projects onto innovation and taking things to the market. And then there are some specific actions which are focused on mental health, but it's really the combination of the two that makes a difference. So starting with pillar one, and that's European Research Council. It's a jewel in the crown of Europe's research and innovation policy. It's a subject of envy of a lot of people in the world, that such a sizable budget has been put in place to support frontier research. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with how it is structured. And it is basically structured in such a way to offer grants to researchers at different stages of their careers, starting from grants for junior researchers on to researchers with a very distinguished track record, and on to grants for research groups. And here there are a number of projects ongoing in the field of psychiatry. I selected one which you can see at the bottom on exploring novel biomarkers of energy metabolism in depression. So in pillar one, there is also emphasis on new knowledge and skills. This is through so-called Marie Skłodowska-Curie actions. And here also quite a significant emphasis on brain research. These are smaller grants, but meaningful in terms of the insights that researchers can gain. Now, the second pillar is super important, and there is a cluster on health that I want to look at in more detail. It is super important because it is about the whole cycle of care, from prevention onto rehabilitation and onto supporting industry. So you can see the 6 different dimensions being mentioned in this slide. And if I were to give a very brief overview of the different destinations, as they are called, the first one is really about healthy lifestyles and how that impacts people's care. And this is, of course, drawing on the realization that only a fraction of outcomes originate in the clinic. Most of the outcomes are anchored in how people live in the environment in which they function, and in other words, in health promotion and disease prevention. And here we had in the previous work program an interesting project related to mental health, which was focused on the molecular and neurobiological understanding of mental health and mental illness. And there is a project that was selected on understanding, predicting, and treating depression in pregnancy. There was also a project on boosting mental health in times of change. So this was about how the transformation that the societies are undertaking impacts mental health, and what policy interventions should be developed on this basis. Now, in the current work program, there is, again, a more horizontal project focused on aging part of the population, the Silver Deal, person-centered health and care in European regions. But interventions with respect to mental health can also be very well envisaged under that umbrella. Now, the second destination is really about the workplace and what the evolution of the workplace means for mental health. And again, as a specific project I identified in the list, which is focused on how interventions should be designed to promote mental and physical health in the changing workplace. And destination 3 is super important because it has to do with tackling diseases and reducing disease burden. So we arrive here slowly into the clinic. And here there is emphasis on innovative health technologies, as I point out on the slides. And there is one specific project to which I would like to return, and it's called Towards Structuring Brain Health Research in Europe, because it sounds a bit innocent, but it holds a great promise of organizing brain health intervention in the years to come at the European level, because this is about preparing what is called the European Partnership on Brain Health. I will come back to this later on. There is also a call on the validation of fluid-derived biomarkers for the prediction and prevention of brain disorders. And it is a very interesting call in which the eBrains communities are taking interest. So if any one of you would like to get involved in preparing a project submission, we are very much open towards that. Now, the fourth destination is really about access to care, innovative, sustainable, and high quality. And here again, a very much focused call on the mental well-being of the health and care workforce. And the fifth destination is more focused on digital technologies. And I will come back to those when I put forward 7 suggestions of trajectories for innovation in psychiatry. But clearly, we have here a long-standing European focus on digital health and excellence in digital health. So there is an ongoing project call on computational models for patient stratification strategies, but also a new call, which is very interesting and which relates to the application of virtual twins in personalized disease management. Again, an area, I would say, of recommended focus for innovation in psychiatry. And then the sixth and final destination has to do with innovative industry. So how innovation in Europe can be helped at the level of industry. And here a range of interesting topics, but I selected one which has to do with making data interoperable, and in particular on how the European electronic health record format can be made useful in that context as the European health data space is being prepared. So that was the second pillar, and in the last pillar there is innovation per se, and the main agency for delivering that innovation support in Europe is at the moment European Innovation Council. It was created a few years ago with the intention of supporting breakthrough innovation. So the realization was made that this is missing in Europe. That breakthrough innovation is doing much better on the other side of the Atlantic, but at the European level there is not enough support for breakthrough innovation. So hence the EIC was created, and it is about projects which have the hope and promise of arriving at the market and being market creative. Per se. There are 3 parts to the EIC activities which are worth pointing out for our purposes today. So EIC Pathfinder is about visionary research with the potential to lead to technology breakthroughs. So that's the starting point. If one has an idea of an initiative that can be marketable, but requires research, this is good for EIC Pathfinder. And the second aspect is EIC Transition, which really builds on projects which have already been supported by European funding. That's why it's called Transition. It's a transition from, for example, European Research Council projects so that they can gain a better scale. And then EIC Accelerator, also very interesting for startups and SMEs to scale up, because let's face it, the biggest deficit in Europe lies at the moment not so much in the area of startup creation as in the area of scale-ups, namely how initiatives can be taken to the market and survive and build this sufficient critical mass. So when looking for psychiatry-related projects or even brain health-related projects, there is not much, to be honest, that is domain-specific. I identified one focal area in the 2021 EIC work program on the measures and ways of stimulating activity in brain tissue. There is nothing in the 2023 program which is domain specific. It's not per se a problem, because now if you have a project to potentially interest the EIC with, you can still use the bulk of the open funding which is available. But I think it's also telling and indicative for us that there isn't a thematic focus, not only on psychiatry, but also on brain health more broadly in the EIC. What it means is that we should step up our advocacy efforts and speak to the funders community about the needs which exist. So I think the right response is both to benefit which the more open horizontal calls, which are there and they provide a lot of funding. And then the second conclusion is the need to step up advocacy efforts to convince funders of the needs which exist in the field of innovation in psychiatry. Here I also managed to find an earlier project from Horizon 2020, just to give you again a flavor of what is being supported. So that's a digital platform for the treatment of depression, relying on non-invasive brain stimulation, which is supposed to be safe to be used at home. This project is ongoing. I would like to stress the need for patient involvement. This is now very much a principle of Horizon projects. Patient involvement is explicitly encouraged, and there are different also instruments of supporting that. Digitalization in particular is meant to empower patients, so that dimension is very often integrated in the project announcements. And finally, there are some specific projects going on that focus on training patients and patient advocates. And here you have two examples of IMI-supported projects. So with that in mind, with that review of what is available and what is on offer, so to say, I would like to suggest to you 7 what I call innovation trajectories, namely areas which are worth focusing our efforts and where European policy can be of help, where it can be supportive. So first of all, there is a clear pivot towards prevention in a lot of the policy approaches. That is currently the most emphasized, I would say, shift that is visible. We can see it very well described in the emerging brain health strategies, including the one I quote here from the European Academy of Neurology that speaks about person-centered approach. with promotion, prevention, treatment, care, and rehabilitation being looked at in a holistic fashion. I think that's a very good conceptual approach. But prevention is a strong focus in a lot of European policy approach, and it's definitely to keep in mind. The second focus is clearly AI tools for diagnostics and therapeutics. So tools that can identify diseases, but also the risk of disease progression, taking into account the different types of data available. So that's one possible focus area, so the AI tools themselves, but then also the clinical validation of AI solutions is very important. And here there is an ongoing project which is just starting called TEF Health, and to decode the term for you, it's the testing and experimentation facilities for health. eBrains as a research infrastructure is part of it. This is coordinated by the Charité Hospital in Berlin, with strong involvement of actors around Europe, especially Karolinska in Stockholm has a very important pivotal role to play. So what this project is about is to offer facilities for testing and validation of AI solutions. And it's a large 60 million euro project, which is meant to help startups and other institutions with the rollout of AI tools. So that will be the second trajectory that I would like to posit to you. And the third has to do with extracting value from data. And this, of course, applies to clinical data to start with. And there is a lot happening in that space through the European Health Data Space Initiative. In order to prepare for that, there is work going on electronic health records and patient registries, in particular from the point of view of what is needed to ensure their interoperability. But there's also emphasis on Internet of Things infrastructure for better measurement and prediction of clinical outcomes. And here there is, in fact, a platform that has been built already called Radar, a very interesting one, which is about extracting data from wearable devices to help, among other things, measure outcomes in depression. And this platform is already in place. It was worked out in a project of Innovative Medicines Initiative a couple of years ago, and its rollout is ongoing. So that is, again, a very interesting and important area, allowing for the data to be more broadly available. And since I mentioned the European health data space, I would like to spend another minute on this, because that's the big promise of last year, when the announcement was made in, I think it was May 2022, of this new initiative. It has two sides to it. One is legislative, and the other one is infrastructural. And the legislative one is about ensuring that data is more accessible and that there are no barriers in place. So basically, the way that this should work is that within certain categories of data, and 15 have been identified as mandatory, you should be able to obtain the data sets you require for different purposes. This can be primary use or secondary use on the basis of a single data request. So that's quite a revolutionary change to the current setup. Ourselves at eBrains, we are mostly interested in secondary use for research purposes, but primary use is also, of course, important. This is more for mobile citizens to start with, but you never know. It's likely to evolve also into a broader primary use, so that our health data could be worked upon at a given point in time, wherever we are in the European Union, of course, because that's where this will be operational. So this is a super interesting project. There is a pilot going on, of which eBrains is part, where the infrastructural basis is being prepared, because the legislative dimension is one thing. This, by the way, is not meant to replace the current privacy regulation, the GDPR, but come and work on top of it. It will be complementary to the GDPR. But of course, there is also the infrastructural side where a lot needs to be prepared, so that interoperability, and here you can see, I won't go into the details of this slide, but interoperability is of course a challenge in itself. And this has to be ready for when the legislation gets out of the pipeline. So that was the third trajectory. Now the fourth, which I would like to draw to your attention, has to do with the development of digital twins in healthcare. And this is a strategic approach on the part of the European Commission. So it's the intention is really to see the digital twin approach being applied across the healthcare system for, again, better benefiting from data. This is about the virtual representation of the given person's organs being at the disposal of the clinician for better prevention and better diagnosis. And the rollout of the digital twin approach is also ongoing and has direct relevance in psychiatry. This is our exemplification of it at eBrains, how existing data, in the case of brain health, can be complemented by virtual data, and how the virtual representation can then allow for insights relevant in diagnostics and therapeutics. Now, the fifth trajectory has to do with personalized management of mental disorders, also a growing emphasis at the European level, and an area which is worth looking at. And in particular, there is an ongoing call announced by the Innovative Health Initiative, which is very interesting. Namely, it's a call focused on building a reusable digital platform. And so that digital reusable platform is meant to include all types of clinical and patient data, but also engagement tools for patients, caregivers, and other actors. This call is open. If any one of you is interested in collaborating on a possible submission, then we are very open at eBrains. One has to add that this is an IHI call, which means that 45% of the budget needs to be contributed by industry. It's a public-private partnership. So the very idea of it is to bring industry into projects, which also, of course, holds the promise of better rollout. The sixth area I would like to put forward has to do with precision psychiatry. I mean, it's an area which surely many of you are very active in, and where the diagnostic systems are meant to be based on deeper understanding of the biological and psychosocial basis of disorders. And in particular, the research domain criteria matrix that was, I think, first introduced in 2009 is deeply relevant here, because it looks at mental health and psychopathology, not through the prism of established diagnostic categories, but major domains of human neurobehavioral functioning. And then the latter are studied along the full range of functioning from normal to abnormal. So precision psychiatry is surely an interesting area. And the last one I would like to highlights today is neuroelectronic medicine. I will owe you an explanation why neuroelectronic medicine. It's a term which we have decided to use in a group of neurotechnology platforms that is producing a white paper on the European strategy on neuroelectronic medicine. And this white paper should be presented in the next few weeks. It's almost ready. And what it posits is that we need a different approach. We need a platform approach to the development of neuroelectronic medicine, because it is so interdisciplinary in nature, and because it includes a lot of actors coming from the material development world, for example, on the way to clinical tests. In precision, in psychiatry, deep brain stimulation and optimization of deep brain stimulation would be the most immediate example of the relevance of neuroelectronic medicine. But I would also want to highlight the fact that the full potential of optogenetics is still to be unlocked. So these are the 7 trajectories that I wanted to share with you. And now let me just look at the clock, because I can't see the watch on my screen, and I can see that almost.
You are almost done. Yes, you are close to.
I'm almost out of the time. So what I will do is I will zoom very quickly through the supporting infrastructures. So first of all, there is, as of last year, a European Alliance of Medical Research Infrastructures that has been put in place to do everything from biobanking all the way to clinical tests. eBrains is in place as a dedicated research infrastructure for brain science, and also ready and happy to support the research projects that you may have and which may require one of these tools, starting from data management through brain atlases, modeling and simulation, and brain-derived technologies, all the way to medical data analytics. So I'll skip the part about eBrains and go straight to the conclusion then. I think that's the best we can do. We'll share the slides, so and we'll be happy to have individual conversations if you are interested in what eBrains can offer. But I would like to conclude with a few words about what is coming up next. And the next big thing, if I can put it out in that way, is the European Partnership on Brain Health. It is planned for the second half of Horizon Europe, starting in 2025. And it will bring the existing brain initiatives under one umbrella. It will have sizable funding. And it will be member state led also. Currently, Germany is preparing to be the lead country, but France is very active. It will lead some of the work packages in the preparatory activities for this partnership. So it's definitely very much on board. This Brain Health Partnership will draw on the work done previously in the European Brain Research Area project. This project identified gaps in the current research agenda and also identified some priorities, including, and I sort of extracted here the ones which are relevant for psychiatry. You will be able to see them in the deck of slides. But what I would like to finish with is what I started off with, namely 2023 and the European Mental Health Initiative. It is super important. It is, in fact, a unique opportunity for the community that we have gathered around the table today. And an input on innovation in psychiatry is needed, because the Commission, when preparing this initiative, will surely look at a variety of areas of imminent importance. starting with access to care, quality care, questions of rights of patients suffering from mental disorders, the question of overcoming stigma. So there will be a lot on the agenda. But what we need to make sure that is very prominently present are the measures that need to be taken in to support innovation in psychiatry. So what I would propose as a very tangible outcome of our discussion today is that we draft under the auspices of Fondation Fondamentale, and eBrains would be happy to help and support this initiative, that we draft a set of recommendations as to what this initiative on mental health in Europe should include with respect to innovation. So Philippe, I will stop here and happy, of course, to hear your comments, first of all, and then everyone's reactions.
So thank you very much, Pavel, for this very broad and comprehensive presentation of what the landscape on what the European community can offer to research and innovation to support and help that. I think it was very, very yes, I would say comprehensive, and for me, I felt particularly interesting the 7 trajectories you presented, because I think they are very practical routes to follow if one wants to set up new project in that field, and I think it will be very helpful for many of us to do so. First, of course, the floor is open to discussion now, and I would maybe add to people who would be too shy to speak questions in English that they could do it in French. I have to tell that Pavel is speaking extremely well French, and so at least he will understand your questions. So don't be shy. If you want to ask questions, you can do it in French also. So I don't know if somebody has, and if you could raise your hands, because I don't see everyone on my screen.
Véronique, you raised your hand.
Thanks, Hakim. Yes, I did raise my hand. Yeah, I'm very interested. Of course, I mean, thank you very much, Pavel. It was thorough, and it was great to have this full panorama, European panorama. So that's great. But I have many questions, but I think I'm going to target to one. Of course, this partnership that is going to be started. It's very interesting because it entails a lot of partners, which means that not only, like it was the case for the ERANET neuron, not only funding agencies, not only also organismes de recherche, what we call EPST or EPIC, are allowed to be on those, but also companies. And it's going to be very stimulating, I think, to have this big umbrella. I still wonder if mental disorders will have a good slot in that partnership, because as you know, Pavel, I'm sure they are working on this strategic research agenda since a while, and they are also, I mean, with IBRA, of course, and yeah, I'm wondering whether mental disorders will have the room they deserve, and we're not going to speak only about mental health without getting into the hardcore.
You have to activate your, yeah.
Shall I react right away?
Yes, sure.
Thanks so much, Veronique. I think you put your finger on the very important issue, because I think what happened in the past few months is that the community, the brain health community, has become sort of more united than it has ever been. But we know very well that this umbrella covers very diverse communities. I mean, if you look at, I mean, there are different disease communities in Europe which have their their ways of interacting and communicating, and therefore they would like to see their disease area to be as relevant as possible. And it's true that that one would need to look after mental disorders in the Brain Health Partnership, because I can see the neurology community being very strong and being very vocal. We will need to, by the way, also make sure that fundamental research is part of the equation. That's what eBrains, among other things, will argue for, that now we cannot skip this very important phase of helping better understanding of the brain. So yes, mental health will need to consolidate, I would say, in its advocacy efforts. I think that's what I would very strongly recommend. That it is a period when there are both opportunities, and this mental health initiative, I think, is a unique opportunity at the European level. It's the one to be grabbed. Being very open with you, because it's this will be it for the time being, and the Commission will not prioritize mental health in the same fashion as it is doing this year. And from what I know, they're also very open to input. So rather than sort of wait and see what comes out, and then sometimes be disappointed by the fact that there isn't enough emphasis in this or that area, I think it's the time to to take things into one's hands and be active in the advocacy effort. So that's the most immediate project of the Mental Health Initiative. Again, it will be very comprehensive. So one should not assume for a moment that it is about innovation in psychiatry, which is our topic today. It's going to be much broader. But in order for innovation in psychiatry to be there and to be prominent, one has to deliver a set of arguments why that should be the case. And again, my 7 innovation trajectories today are a subjective list. I mean, it's by no means cast in stone. It's open for discussion. I drafted it so as they all somehow resonate with the current European activities and priorities, because that's always more effective if you're not proposing something entirely new, but if you try to tap into an ongoing work. So with respect to data, extracting value from data, going on to Internet of Things, wearables, and all that, there is a lot that one needs to build on. So that's one set of activities. And the second is the Brain Health Partnership, where, I mean, I don't want to get into sort of tiny details, but there is a preparatory action that, in fact, is today the 12th? It's the 12th, no? So today, this call will be opened. It's called Towards Structuring Brain Research in Europe. And basically, it is about a so-called CSA action. So it's a preparatory activity for the Brain Health Partnership. There is a consortium in the making. It met in December for the first time. That will apply to this call, and it's led by Germany, because Germany is but France is very active in it. So there's no doubt. And by the way, France is the lead country for eBrains, and Germany is the lead country for Brain Health Partnerships. So there is a balance from a certain perspective. So this CSA action will start at the end of 23, because the submission will be made and it will be assessed and so on. So there is a bit of time for putting into the Brain Health Partnership. But these strategic research and innovation agendas, for those of you who are not familiar with those, these are very thorough, solid 200-page documents, which basically spell out that everything that needs to be done in a given area. There are some European partnerships which exist already. There is one in hydrogen, for example, in different areas. The closest to our area is the incoming personalized medicine partnership. And then there is brain health now up and coming. So this 200-page long documents, it will only be written in the course of 24. So there is time to prepare.
Yeah. To prepare papers and also what about the regulation agency? You know, like the new HERA, which is Health European, HERA, I don't remember exactly the acronym. Do you think that they will jump? They will be able to be on those partnerships? Because I think for brain research particularly, it's important to have that. And I've seen it that for the partnership in water, that we had some regulation agencies that were interested by jumping into the partnership. So I don't know if it's the same for brain health or if any thoughts about that, because I don't know if you have.
So, HERA is mostly focused on pandemic preparedness and resilience. So I would not expect them to be that active at the moment, because they have enough to do with respect to, pandemic preparedness. DG Research has what they call a people's department. That's where brain is. That's where brain is covered. And there is a team working on brain health issues, so they would be the necessary point of contact in DG Research. But when we pick up one of my innovation trajectories related to health data or digital twins, this is DG Connect. DG Connect has the digital health unit. So one would need to talk to at least 3 DGs, so DG Research, DG Health. And DG Health, by the way, is responsible for the European Health Data Space, among other things, and for this mental health initiative. And then DG Connect for the more digitally based innovations.
Thanks a lot, Pavel. Thanks a lot.
We are close to the end, unfortunately, but we have questions from Anna Andreazza, and I would like to take questions and also after maybe to make a few suggestions about what we could do in the future. But Anna, please ask your questions in French or in English.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Pavel. This was fantastic to learn the innovation system that is moving forward in 2023. I have a quick question for you. You mentioned a lot in terms of prevention and brain health. Is that in a specific area that the calls will be actually be putting forward? Will be diagnostic, digital, or a combination of that? Because prevention is a big field. So is anything that we as a community in brain health should be thinking more diagnostic, digital, nutrition, or a combination?
Yes, I would expect that prevention would be a focus on its own. So there will be dedicated projects supported in the area of prevention. So should, of course, anyone be interested in that part of the cycle, then I would think of specific dedicated solutions to address the question of prevention. All I can say is that this is definitely an area which has seen exponential growth in attention, and when that happens, there will also be opportunities. So I think the most immediate opportunity which exists is this IHI project on personalized disease management. And so that comes somewhat later in the cycle, but it's something which is again open right now, and it's an IHI call, so industry participation is envisaged. This is super interesting and important, but prevention will definitely see a growing emphasis.
And if I may, there are already a few calls which are open. And just to answer also to Véronique, I think mental disease have been already taken into account much more than before, because we have at least 3 open calls which specifically mention mental health and disease. And one of them is dedicated to biomarkers, you know, and so I think, and one also on the digital twins that Pavel mentioned. So I think we have rooms to now to do something more concrete. And maybe since we could not, I think, continue for long, I would maybe suggest that we can still take questions and of course propositions from all of you through Fondamental, if Véronique will agree about that, or through eBrains also, because we are really eager to do that at eBrains. And also I have to add that in each of the projects, each time if you add eBrains as tools for supporting your project, this will be a clear, nice addition to the project. Now eBrains is mentioned in many of the calls related to brain disease, which is great, I would say. And also I would say that because I know that entering into this European project is not so easy when you are not, you know, very familiar with it, because you need to be part of a consortium, as you alluded to. You need to see what is already existing in terms of application and so on, and so it's not so easy. But in France and in every European countries, you have what is called national contact points. And in France, you have Helena Offert, as you know, for the infrastructure, and Virginie Sivan for disease, and for health, and including. So we can also access through them. I will be very happy to provide you all the information about that, and so I think we are much more now better informed and equipped to answer these calls, and we know we can be really aware of what is now will be announced, and for sure, as you, Véronique and Pavel advocated, we need to be very proactive in proposing, you know, new ways of supporting research and innovation, because innovation is a key aspect. I think we have to stop at some point, and I would like again to thank Pavel very much for this extremely interesting and comprehensive presentation, Véronique for housing us here, and for the questions, and all of you for attending the meeting. And I hope it will be interesting. It was interesting for you. And again, if you have any questions or proposition, we will be very happy to take them through emails. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Soon.
Thank you very much. It was very stimulating. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.